educated in India. He has made spiritualism his mainstay since 2003 as a spiritualist. He was commissioned as a spiritualist medium and healer in 2013 with the Southern Casadega Spiritualist Camp Meeting Association. He resides and practices here and is a member of our board of trustees. He enjoys continuing education, which takes him worldwide to study spiritualism and continue to develop his spiritual gifts. Joy enjoys teaching, speaking, photography, and traveling. Now, please join me in welcoming Joy and showing our appreciation for his dedication to spiritualism. Joy?
I think I need to gain new heights. Here we are. Just to begin with, I appreciate your presence here. It's wonderful to have you here. And as I address or speak, I speak from inspiration. So this exploration of thoughts and ideas are as applicable and equally usable for me than it is for anybody else. So please recognize that. So what do you think of change? And why is it? And that's the point. I think that's where I feel my focus is, because it is quite different to be used to a certain way of life and processes. And if there is a change, how do you adapt to it? And that's the part for me. I have been pondering if I am into the central thought or where I am, because as the inspiration runs, the focus is working in that way. So perhaps we will all discover in some ways in the sense of embracing change or coming close to it in some ways. So there is a very constant thought I think we have gotten so tired of probably hearing is change is constant. Right? We've all heard that multiple times, no matter when life throws a curveball, that's the first thing, change is constant. But here I'm sitting in that chair and I have to tell my story, the song that we just sang. And the part of that is perhaps I'm wanting to present a different phrase that might be replaceable with change is constant. Our expansion is inevitable. What do we do with that ever-evolving version of change? What is it doing? Our expansion is inevitable. And something within us grows tremendously as we observe and follow through the changes that are being presented to us. Because that within ourselves, which you could call our own soul, our spirit, that is expanding too. It's not just the circumstance or the world is expanding, but that spirit within ourselves is expanding too. A few weeks ago, there was a responsive reading in our hymnals, and there was the things, God doesn't change. And my thought is, if we are not changing, then God is not changing. If we are changing, if our consciousness is expanding, then that infinite spirit, that's why it is called infinite spirit, changes. And the same infinite spirit resides within our own bodies and our own movement. Thus, we are infinite beings. We have unlimited potential. So when the changes are given to us, sometimes we don't like them, but yet we have to do them. So if anybody has been in a working environment, a job, I'm pretty sure you have gone through some changes that were handed to you that were not in agreement and alignment with you, but you had to do them anyways. So that's that version of it. Sometimes when you don't have a choice and you're in the middle of the change, you respond to it in a certain order. And that order is undefined and unidentified anywhere, but it is still a change. Sometimes breakup in relationships and agreements allow us the same sense of grief or a sense of loss when we lose somebody to the other side, or somebody graduates to the other side. But is that grief or that void is no different than when the physical aspect of that happens. All these things that I'm sharing with us, they applies to all of us. We have seen and experienced in our own way, and they always leave us different than when we experience those things. So as a kid, I have observed a lot of death and dying. And as a human, I have seen death and dying everywhere. And it's not just the death and dying of the physical, of the humans. There's death and dying of our pets or animals or just wild animals. And then there's death and dying of forests and trees that is a part of our living conscious network. And as a kid, in my story of change, I did not recognize how impactful it has been. A little bit more withdrawn and observant of these changes at this point in my life. But as a kid, I would be very sad about those things. And I was only sad without feeling any sense of losing something or somebody. I was just sad because it was a sad occasion. There are family members that are grieving, crying, and we have our own different cultures have different way of processing that. And as a little kid and a youth in me observed that, and my focus was, how can I make these people comfortable? The one that has taken the journey is already gone. But these living people are more in a mournful mess than I would want them to be. So a part of me was wanting to comfort them or bring a smile on their face or give them a hug. And I just was doing what I felt was mine to do at that time. And later on, as I'm becoming more into the spiritual journey or more awareness of the afterlife, it still is that place. But I see change much differently in that version because I'm now happy for this experience, because it allows those that are feeling the loss to observe their own changes. Somebody steps in those shoes, somebody fills that void, somebody takes on the responsibility, somebody piggybacks and splits and shares whatever needs to be done. So there's a lot of embracing of change that goes on, is in there. But is it same or is it different when you have your own changes working in your own life? You want a certain outcome, you have a goal in mind, you're striving towards it, and it does not work out the way you would have hoped for. Is that experience stimulating a change in you? Or you're just becoming hardened and dealing with it and walking to the next similar circumstance? There's an equal opportunity of embracing the change when things like that happen. We're seeing more and more of those things because the way the life is, the way the consciousness is running at this time, neither here or there, it is how it is. So my version of change has become to be present when it's happening. I've learned over my many years of my own ebb and flow, give myself a little time to just hit the pause button and just stay there. I'm in the middle of it, but I have tried and become less reactive about it. Not 100%, but I've become less reactive about it. That allows me to be a little bit more responsive to what is going on. Paying attention to myself has become somewhat of a priority. What I feel, what I sense, what I have to do, yet have to have that little appropriate pause before I make a reaction or take an action or have a follow through. And I try my best to not be in the reactive place as possible. So that change doesn't feel life altering. It is still changing, but it's not a big life altering because I'm prepared and poised in that space. So going through those changes I think I've created a version that becomes enjoyable. How somebody's going to react to my quietness or not being engaging when something is going on. So it's not selfing or self-fulfilling, but it's just a place of observation. But these changes are inevitably happening at all times. My wonderful, beautiful change happened just a few hours after losing my mother. And I heard the voice like you're hearing mine. And that was only one occasion. And did not happen after that. I only heard her voice at that point. But that was big life-changing moment for me, what this is all about. And what I will share with you in sincerity, I did not doubt that voice. I did not doubt the instruction she gave, not because she was my mother, because the end point or the source point felt pretty genuine, pretty authentic. My mind did not go, oh, who is this or why is she saying what she's saying? But I had a place of that understanding, and that has just changed my life because it has opened my faculties of my mediumistic skills and gifts and healing and everything. And I was pretty young when that happened, and it had really changed my life. Any death and dying before that didn't have the same impact. A lot of death and dying after she's gone in my own personal family and in my knowing, not the same. That something about that voice as it came through just sort of absolutely took me to a whole different place. Now, over time, there's another familiar voice that I have mentioned in different talks and communications. When that voice speaks to me, it's almost an absolution to execute. It's very firm what they're instructing. Somewhere I have to do it. Sometimes I have to do it soon. Sometimes it happens even if I don't have a choice. And then my piece is within that changes. I should have listened a few months back. Now I'm right here in the middle of it. Not prepared, more prepared than I'm right now. But that voice has become such a beautiful friend because it's usually steering me away from some goof up I'm about to make. And I'm not kidding. The part of me at that time feels like this doesn't make sense. But when the time moves on, that voice becomes very comforting and saying, so that voice doesn't happen more than once. It just gives the instruction and leaves me alone. It's mine to do whatever goes after that. But that is also a change I had to embrace because first time when it happened, I had no idea what was going on. I was familiar with my mother's voice, but I was not aware of this one, but it just became such a friendly knowing, and it's a knowing place. And I bring this up because we have our own sensitivities at our own level that are prompting us before the big changes come into our life. Those little nudges, those little gut feelings, those little acts of persuasion that are telling you to do something or making you feel something is at the helm. Sometimes it's joyful. It's not always the nitty-gritty of sadness and challenges. Sometimes it's a joyful change. But at the same time, bonding with those little nudges might lead you to a wonderful place of exploration within yourself. So that change is usually, if you observe it, it has always left you expanded more than what you ever was. So change is usually, referred most of the time that is bringing some challenge or hardship. But the joy within that change is, what am I going to be after all this is done? What my expansion will look like. If somebody is giving me a challenge, what this can allow me to be. And that part, I feel I would encourage everybody to think from that part. If you have any circumstances that you know are challenging or perturbing or giving you a little uncomfortable placement in your life, what potential do they hold for yourself to be more than that? My love for spiritualism is about the philosophy it has helped us work with, especially for me, because it always brings me to some new version of seeing the same thing, the 10th time, but a whole different scope of understanding. But the philosophy that keeps me moving into my own positive way. Now, can I be stubborn and hard-headed? Why not? Been there, done that. I'm capable of doing it again. Have I done it recently? Sure. Because I'm not different than any one of you. So I'm not anything greater or lesser than as you are. I'm just a different version of yourself. But even those stubborn decisions and choices stimulate a process of expansion. The should, could, woulds in our life become just a part of that engagement of the energy. And I keep working with this word change is because you have to understand every opportunity will leave you more than what you were. And that's the beauty of anything. Same thing. Have a party, have good drinks, have good friends, good conversation. It still leaves you expanded. It leaves you to have more of that version of fun and enjoyment than anything else. But there's a stimuli to it. So our journey is always connected and interconnected with each other, and is always platform and exit and departure are always happening at the same time. In my simplicity, I'm pretty convinced with your presence here and this interaction will lead me more than by the time I exit this premise by the end of all this. There is something more that is working through our journeys. How are you going to embrace your change? This change is not going anywhere. In 1900, somebody says life is big, lots of changes are happening. 2024, we're still repeating that statement. So those hardships haven't changed, just the version of it looks more to our time than it was back then. The fossil fuel was running out, all these political things were still happening then, hasn't changed much. So change doesn't change, but the expansion is always bigger, it is always different, it's always more, and that has to be remembered. So in my silliness, when changes started to happen in my personal way, and my stillness always puts me to go back to the divine timing. And I would tell you numerous times, more than my two hands full, where I've said, it's not for me to do. It's not for me to do anything. I'm just going to leave it as is. It's all going to work out for the highest best. I don't have a clue what I will do if I were to do it. And that little silliness takes this pressure off me because I'm no longer then obligated to make it more complex than what it already is. And I'm encouraging you to understand that try that one time. It's not that you're giving up on yourself, but this is saying is, I'm going to just slightly withdraw. I may not have the bigger picture that I'm looking at as an outcome. I may be very narrowed down to one point or one outcome, but this could look much beautiful from a different vantage point. So shift your focus and find how that goes. And the mind plays its own game while you're going through all this. My brain is saying, look over here, you could do this, or you could have said this, and so forth. But at the same time, the journey is to try to find that poise. Just a little stalling, what I call it. The stall for a little while will take you to the next place is there. Now, accountability comes with change. Accountability comes with change. So I have learned to say, Joy, I'm forgiving you for putting yourself in that situation. So my forgiveness piece starts with me before I go working with something out there. I'm a part of that situation, so why can't I start by forgiving? And that part has, once again, gave me enough pause to reflect on how I'm going to participate in the future or in the next interaction. I have to take the forgiveness to me first and tell myself, I'm a part of this. Without me, this was not happening. So I have to be responsible and accountable for my journey in that part. So that forgiveness, I am starting to choose more and more to say, wherever you are, if something is not the most fluid, I release myself and become furthermore observant or grounded, if you would call it, in your own way. Now, taking small steps is also another thing I've understood. The thing is, how do you take care of the elephant? One bite at a time. I'm notorious in my past versions of me to try to deal with the elephant, just drag it out as much as I can. And I become so convinced over my own tribulation, saying, a little bit at a time. I cannot handle this all at one time. And I've become slightly better at it. And that's the part for my little joy that resides in me is like, oh, there's a big tall order here, but one small step at a time, we will make that process. And the place, what our organization or our structure or our belief system has provided us, knowing our growth is progressive. Sometimes it's a spurt, sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's spontaneous, but most of the time it is one layer at a time. And we have to understand our own makeup to understand what that is. Mine is mine and yours is yours, and you enjoy your journey and appreciate the person sitting next to it who are having their own journey. That allows softness and gentleness and the buffer to have space for each other. To not be able to have rigidity for long enough, that becomes fragile. So change is expansion waiting for us without fail. And as I bring this to a close, I would like each and every one of us to think about that part. That word, that phrase is always going to be there. Hundreds generations down, it still be the same. Change is happening. Something big is around the corner. But are we leaving ourselves and anybody that is in our journey and elevating them to the equal opportunity of being more than where we are? And that's the part what I feel you need to understand. So I will close with this little simple, but I feel in a way it's profound. Nothing in nature that expands has a digressive value. Mountains expand and elevate, the trees grow and elevate, and at each step, they are dropping an older version of them to be something new. And thank you for being here.